Love, exciting and new.
Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever.
It's a love.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships of Bermudan and British Registry.
The Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, the Cloak of Invisibility. Together they make the Deathly Hallows. Together they make one Master of Death. The last will and testament of Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore.
Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living. And above all those who live without love.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Chapter 20, Xenophilius, Lovegood. Elizabeth is with us.
Hello, everyone.
Wow, that was very subdued.
I was just thinking for a second how he has such a name. It's such a mouthful.
It is a doozy of a first name, yeah. If you're wondering what this chapter revolves around, it might be Xenophilius Lovegood. Before we get to the chapter, we do have a bunch of shout-outs. It's almost like something we've said lately on the podcast has stirred some conversation.
I wonder what that is.
I know. Well, we have said a lot, so it might be. We'll start out with the smaller, simpler comments, and then we'll go forward here. Amelia on Sorcerer's Stone, Chapter 1, left a comment saying that she is a Hufflepuff.
Team Molly's house.
Yeah, I feel like we've gotten a lot of Hufflepuff comments lately, which is
I like the fact that there are so many Hufflepuff comments, though, because I feel like in the book they get really shunned to the side.
You know what? I'm still fighting the fight for Cedric Diggory. As a real shame that character is not with us anymore, because I think could have been pivotal. But anyway, that got me thinking. Amelia's comment got me thinking. Like, we did post a poll way back when during the Sorcerer's Stone book about which house you belong to. So I wanted to go over some of those results from that poll. As of right now, that poll, as well as all of our polls, are up for a very, 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 very long time. So please vote on them if you have not. And those are all on Spotify. This one, which house do you belong to? 42% said Gryffindor.
Okay.
16% said Slytherin. 22% Hufflepuff. And 20% Ravenclaw.
Yeah, Ravenclaw.
So what I'm finding here is the Slytherin, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw contingent is similar in their numbers, and Gryffindor is way ahead, pretty much doubling the other houses.
Yeah. I
feel like that's a lot of our Golden Trio influence on some of the readers.
I want more love for my house, so if you are a Ravenclaw, please go vote in the poll.
Yeah, that also got me thinking on a couple of other of our polls, which just intrigue me personally. And the one is, since I am a big traveler, where are you listening from around the world? And on this poll, we got about 55% of our listeners listening from the United States. 23% of our listens are coming from Europe.
Ooh.
Hello to all the Europeans listening. We got 2% listening from South America. Bienvenidos.
Very cool.
We get 3% listening from Asia. 5.1% from Australia. About 2.5% or so listening from Africa. And 9.4% listening from somewhere else in the world. Ooh. Which intrigues me, because I listed out a bunch of different continents there. So let us know where you're listening from, because I am very interested. So there's that. And one other interesting poll, and this is from Chapter 1, The Boy Who Lived, of Sorcerer's Stone. And this is our biggest poll that we have running. Obviously, it's our first poll, so would stand to reason that it has the most votes and stuff. But is this your first time reading the series? So For those with us through the whole journey of this podcast, we've usually done a spoiler and a non-spoiler.
Right. We've given that up because we're in book 7 now.
We've given that up, which, again, I'll get to in a second. But we've given up the spoiler, non-spoiler thing because we're almost done. But the reason we've done a non-spoiler and a spoiler mainly is because of this poll right out the gate. You'd think at this point, since the books have been out for quite a long time, and the movies have been out for quite a long time,
Yeah.
that why would I need a non-spoiler section?
Yeah.
Well, 49.5% on this poll, which is a substantial poll, said they are starting the series, excited to start the series.
That's cool.
50.5% said, no, I've read this a lot. It's essentially 50-50, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Again, we, at this point in book 7, have decided to do away with the spoiler section because we're going to get there soon enough anyway.
So basically, when that 150% finishes, they should go back to the very beginning and listen to the spoiler sections and see how many foolish discussions we had during those.
100%. That would be very, very entertaining. But we've done away with the spoiler sections. And a couple of the next couple of comments that we've had, I'll read half of those comments, but I can't read the other half because they do involve spoilers.
Which we were aware of in the discussion, but we couldn't say it.
That being said, those spoiler comments that were said, and you know who you are, yeah, we know. We know. It's just, we're doing non-spoilers. We're doing non-spoilers right now. But yes, we are aware.
We got to protect that 50%. They're still innocent little younglings.
Yes. We are aware that there are some big things still to come in this book, and we are aware of what they are and what their consequences have been in some previous chapters.
We'll talk about those bits when we get to them.
We will hopefully remember to talk about those when we get to those chapters. But yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. So we move on to some of these comments. We have Satan, who left a comment on our Blue Sky. We are on Blue Sky now. Please come find us. Where you can find us at Hogwarts a Pod, like you can at pretty much every other social media outlet.
By this point, we've only been up and running for a little over a week, and already we have over 100 followers. So if you are one of those people, thank you for following us there. Yeah,
it's a relatively new thing, but we're excited to be on Blue Sky. So please come find us there. Satan says, I've always wondered why there are no portraits of the founders of Hogwarts.
That's such a good question.
It is a good question. We never actually get comments on that kind of thing. People passively walking by a portrait of Godric Gryffindor. We don't even get comments from characters in the book about like, oh, I was at St. Mungo's and there was a portrait of Hufflepuff. Or I was at the Ministry of Magic and there was a portrait of Slytherin.
Right.
We don't really get passive comments like that. You'd think if there were to be any portrait of them, it would probably be in Hogwarts and in the headmaster's office.
Yeah.
That being said, I can imagine if there were portraits of the founders, they would be way up at the top, probably, because they would obviously be the oldest portraits there.
I also have the thought that if they were going to do a headmistress's portrait, they'd kind of want a group shot. And I feel like Hufflepuff especially would be like, yeah, come on, guys, let's all be in the one picture. And then Slytherin and Gryffindor would not be pleased with each other, and one would be throwing a fit. Kind of like the Harry Potter and Lockhart picture that they took together where Harry, like, refuses to be in the picture. I imagine that kind of thing going on.
Yeah, I don't know why there particularly aren't any portraits of these founders other than maybe this predated the idea of wizarding portraits.
That, or by the time Slytherin left, then they had the thought like, oh, we probably should have made a portrait.
Because
missed the opportunity.
I mean, they're famous people just in general around the wizarding world.
Yeah.
Like the whole wizarding world, not just the Britain wizarding world. So it's a little surprising. So the only thing I could think of is that they predated that trend or that achievement.
Maybe they were too busy teaching to teach their portraits how to be them.
However, that being said, could you imagine the founders being portraits in the headmaster's office? What kind of resource that could be?
Do you think Slytherin would ever mention his little chamber of secrets?
No. Unless it was a Slytherin headmaster.
You'd be like, oh, darn, you guys discovered that, huh?
Yeah, maybe. No, well, that's an interesting point, but you'd think, like, Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff and Gryffindor would always have input on the goings-on at their school. I can't imagine those 4 portraits would be quiet amongst the group of portraits there.
Well, especially since you feel like it's your school, because it is.
Because it is.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they would, we see Phineas Nigellus at points chirping in with his 2 cents on how the school should be run. Mm-hmm. I could only imagine if those 4 portraits were in the headmaster's office, they wouldn't be quiet. They would want input on how their school is going.
I feel like the headmaster would then want a mute button on that specific portrait, but maybe they would put like a permanent sticking charm behind it. So
Yeah,
you're
but
like,
do you
you're
dare
stuck
do
with
that?
us. You're stuck with us
Do
here.
you dare do that? Because I feel like you get in some major trouble if you tried to mute Godric
Be like,
Gryffindor.
sorry, I work better in quiet, and muted for eternity.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening. However, this does lead into another comment that we have from Sandhya, who left her comment on Deathly Hallows, Chapter 17, Bathilda's Secret. And the question is, are you really dead in the wizarding world if your painting is still there? I'm surprised Harry never had paintings done of his parents or Sirius. Or can they only be created when they are alive? So, good question. We've kind of covered this at one point, the idea of portraits, because you almost have to teach your portrait, like...
To be yourself.
To be yourself.
Yeah.
Your personality traits, your way of thinking, all of that.
Which is honestly, like, I know we've had this discussion before, but it was never something that I imagined when I first read the series. I didn't think you'd have to teach your own portrait. I just assumed that a portrait was made and some kind of potion or something was dripped on it, or like it was developed in some potion and that made it become magically like you.
Yeah. You have to have the painting done while you're alive to have the impact of it. Are you really dead in the wizarding world if your painting is still there? It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Because your consciousness and yourself seems to live on.
It's the same comment we had with like ghosts. Like you're still there technically. Are you dead? Are you living? Are you unliving living? Like what's the qualification? I imagine there's a room in the Ministry of Magic and the Department of Mysteries that dives right into it.
Man, Art, you know what? These comments are so good and our answers are so good that they just roll right into the other. One right into the next.
What's the next one?
About ghosts.
Ooh.
So A.S. Young, 08, also left a comment on Deathly Hallows, Chapter 17, Bathilda's Secret. And A.S. Young is checking us a little bit. And that's okay. He says, ghosts aren't necessarily bound to a certain place. He brings up the Headless Hunt visiting Hogwarts, Myrtle haunting her bully, but then being...
Yes, yeah. Those are good points.
Imprisoned by the Ministry of Magic, essentially.
Yeah.
And then the Bloody Baron and Grey Lady dying abroad, but end up spending most of their time at Hogwarts.
That's a good point.
And that's in reference to, we were talking about Godric's Hollow, and if James and Lily were there, where would they be actually, like...
Yeah.
Where would they be?
We thought they'd be confined to their house.
Maybe. Yeah. So, yeah, checking us there. That is true. All of the examples that you bring up are accurate. We can't remember everything all the time. As far as A.S. Young and Sandhya go, they both bring up a spoiler that happened in that chapter, Bathilda's Secret. But again, spoilery. We will discuss those at a future time when they pop up. Last comment, A.V. left another comment on Deathly Hallows, Chapter 17, Bathilda's Secret. Almost like that chapter was meaningful. We had a conversation about, it was interesting, Voldy giving Lily a chance to survive. So A.V. says, Voldy giving Lily a chance to save herself. James told Lily he'd hold him off, thus making James a threat that had to be eliminated. And why he didn't give James the same opportunity, despite him actually having a pure blood line versus Lily's less than pure blood line. A.V. also gives another comment to his point, but it does involve a minor spoiler.
Sorry, A.V. We'll get to it later.
Which we are also aware of, but yeah, that's maybe even a more potent spoiler than the others. So we are going to pause on that one I know it's a little hard with us not doing the spoiler sections. We can't dive in as maybe fully as we would like.
Believe us, we are censoring ourselves
We
hardcore.
try.
We've tripped up a few times too, and you've had to edit it out.
And I've had to do some editing magic. Yeah, we'll get there. So, but like I said, we enjoy the conversations. We enjoy the interaction with all of you and leaving your comments on your thoughts and your comments on our thoughts. We appreciate all the participation in the polls because that's awesome. And I love seeing those results all the time. So again, find us on our socials at HogwartsAPod, whether that's Instagram, whether that's Blue Sky, whether that's YouTube. We are still on Twitter for the moment. Mm-hmm. That may change. We'll see how that goes.
We'll see. We'll see what the temperature of it is.
Yep. But for right now, you can find us at HogwartsAPod. So now we do have a chapter to get to.
Yeah, I want to see Lovegood.
We start out with, again, the trio is reunited. Mm-hmm. Hermione, still very salty. Harry, perfectly neutral in the situation, just chilling, just having a good old time. And Ron tends to be in a more somber mood in the presence of Hermione, but rather happy in the presence of Harry.
I liked Harry's comment about saying he felt like the only non-mourner at a funeral. But I think if I were...
Very small funeral.
Very small funeral. I think if I were one of the three, though, I would definitely be on Team Hermione with wanting Ron to sit in his uncomfortableness for just a little bit longer.
Okay. Elizabeth teasing us a little bit on how she feels about Ron returning. We will get into her full thoughts in a few minutes.
Okay.
So, Ron has returned from the greater wizarding world, and thus has information about it. He asks Harry and Hermione, like, wow, how have you guys avoided the taboo? Mm-hmm. And Harry's like, what are you talking about? What taboo? And Ron's like, well, Voldy's name. They jinxed it. Mm-hmm. And that's how they track people. They figure only the greatest supporters of Dumbledore, those trying to defy Voldy, would actually use Voldy's name.
They said they nearly got Kingsley because of it, because obviously Kingsley's not going to say you-know-who. So he's on the run for it now, too.
Yeah, they actually cornered him, and he fought his way out. Multiple Death Eaters cornered him, fought his way out, and now he's on the run. And Ron adds, like, that's how they found us at the diner on Tottenham Court Road. Mm-hmm. So that mystery has now been answered.
It is interesting to think that you can create a spell that strong that could censor people across the whole country. You know? Like, I mean, people you've never even met before. The idea of they say this one word and you can just swoop in on them.
I don't even think it's across the country. I wonder if it's the whole world.
Possibly.
Like, literally anybody around the world that says that name.
Yeah.
Well, okay, there's a couple of things that have to happen. I suppose it has to be such a unique name, which this is. I guess that's number one. It's almost like a patent or a trademark.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this has to be so unique
that
this would actually work.
It's just interesting to even think that that could be a spell. Like,
it's clever.
It's very clever, but it's just so intense.
And this is right up Voldy's alley because he doesn't want anybody saying Lord Voldemort. He doesn't want anybody... Surely he doesn't want anybody uttering Tom Riddle. Do you think Tom Riddle is also jinxed?
I don't think enough people know that Tom Riddle was Voldemort in order to taboo it. Like, really insider knowledge. Or if you do know it, then you're so scared of the man that you're like, I'm not saying anything that even resembles anything close to those
I'm
names.
surprised he didn't do it when Dumbledore was still alive. Because Dumbledore was the only one really calling him Tom. In such a boss move. So
it said it works similar manner to the trace spell, which I guess makes sense because the trace is put on a large
That's how you track
population.
People.
Yeah. But rather than being triggered when any magic at all was used, it's just triggered when certain specific words are spoken. It says it works regardless of the age of the speaker, and it disables some weaker protective magical enchantments. So, for example, if you were in a building protected by the Fidelius charm, it might reveal the general area of the house, but it can't necessarily break that charm. So that also explains how they were able to find them at Sirius's house. Of like, this is the area that they are, because they said his name, but they can't get into the place.
Fair enough. We've learned something about Ron.
What have we learned?
Ron, for the life of him, cannot remember Patronuses. So he struggled to remember that Harry's Patronus is a stag, despite the extensive amount of experience Ron has.
To be fair, it's the same animal. It's just male versus female.
One looks very different.
Yeah, but even still.
Antlers are very noticeable.
It was a time of crisis. He was
One is larger and has antlers. It's a very distinct difference. And then he can't remember that Kingsley's Patronus is a lynx.
Yeah.
Which they know fairly recently because we saw the lynx appear at the wedding with Kingsley's voice. And then he also doesn't know that Albus's Patronus is a phoenix because he thinks, well, maybe Albus somehow sent the dough.
To be fair, if there was anyone who could change their Patronus at will, I feel like it'd be Dumbledore.
Yeah, Albus's Patronus is a phoenix. I feel like that's fairly straightforward given Fawkes's influence. And if you've watched the Fantastic Beasts movies, you know the phoenix is a particularly potent magical creature in the Dumbledore family. So, you know, there's that connection as well, which Ron just completely seems to whiff on. But that's okay. Ron thinks about why Albus gave him the Deluminator. We talked about in the last episode the idea of Ron and the nature of Ron and all that kind of stuff. But he himself thinks, oh man, Albus knew I would ditch you guys. Mm-hmm. Like, and that hits him hard. He's like, wow, Albus...
He knew this about me and I didn't even know it about myself.
Yeah, Albus looked at me and thought I would ditch my closest friends in a time of need. Like, how does that make you feel?
I like Harry's response, though. So, no, he must have known you'd always want to come back.
Yep.
What a friend.
Yep. Now, the question that we debated, me, Julie, and Molly, was the idea of, like, what is that? Does Albus view Ron as a deserter? Does he view him as someone who would run off but then come back? Also, what do you think of Ron's return to the group and that dynamic? And would you accept him back? You hinted towards a certain direction earlier. What do you got?
I hinted at something, but despite my hint, that isn't necessarily my firm thoughts.
Ooh.
I would like to first point out the fact that the Deluminator being able to be a Portkey is some of the coolest magic that we've seen in this book, especially since this is something that goes all the way back to book 1, chapter 1. It's just such a cool magic to think that you don't need the Ministry's approval to make a Portkey with this thing, and that you don't even have to attach it to an object. You can just have it come inside you and then just disapparate, and you just show up where you're supposed to be without even knowing where you're supposed to be going.
Well,
that's cool.
To be fair, I'm sure the Ministry would love to know about this Deluminator and what its actual magic is.
Yeah, but he's not going to tell.
Even prior to this new regime, I'm sure the Fudge Scrimgeour administrations would have loved to put a halt on unregistered Portkey use.
I don't know if they'd be able to work it, though, because I love the fact that it only started to work when Hermione and Harry mentioned Ron's name. And, like, that almost seemed to be a radio signal or something or a telephone call. Like, okay, they're ready for you now. Like, you can come back. That love seems to be operating the Portkey. So the fact that he came back, I do agree with Hermione that, like, he should sit in his uncomfortableness. But I also very much agree with Harry that because you came back shows that you truly do care, and the fact that you mentioned feeling immediate remorse for your actions the second you left, like, that makes sense as to why you couldn't come back. You got picked up by snatchers and it was hard to get away, and then by the time you tried to find us, you couldn't find us. So the fact that he did come back is just a testament to their friendship, and I like it.
Alrighty. At the end of the last chapter, he does hand Harry that stolen wand that he picked up off one of the Snatchers. Mm-hmm. And Harry attempts to practice with the new wand, not going well. Harry seems to notice that the magic done with the wand is weaker and seems to be a little bit clumsier.
Yeah, I like that he was trying to enlarge a spider with the wand, and he managed to enlarge it, but then he couldn't reduce it after Ron was like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, do you not remember that I'm scared of spiders? Like, talk about not remembering things. This is his biggest fear.
So I suppose, is that just now an enlarged spider?
I think so.
Is that now like a super predator in this woods? Or is it just an exceptionally fine meal for some bird or something like that? Does this genetically modify the spider? I'm getting crazy with it now, but no. Ron ends up telling Harry of a radio program that's not controlled by the Ministry of Magic, and you need a password to tune in. So he spends some time trying to tap a radio with his wand, muttering different phrases, different words.
I wonder if Harry tapping on it with this new wand would even work, because I mean, Hermione said that magic, it requires confidence and practice in order to be as good, but Harry did say, like, this wand feels foreign in my hands. So if he were to try to attempt to tap out the news radio station, would it even work then, or no?
I don't know, but it's interesting to me that it's not just the Daily Prophet now that's been coerced into spouting the new Ministry of Magic regime's stance on things. It's generally all major forms
of media
yeah, are now towing the line of what can be said.
That's when you have to have people who are really good critical thinkers to know what is the fluffy that the media is feeding you versus what is reality.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. It's just, we've talked in a previous episode of how hard that can sometimes be. Mm-hmm. And you're getting this from news sources that you previously trusted.
Right.
Who are now spouting the same thing. It does make you start to wonder, or at least question.
Well, especially since they don't usually come out and be like, hey, our leadership has changed, or our owner has changed, and their political beliefs have changed, so therefore everything that we say now is going to be Team Voldy.
It's also Voldy.
Yeah.
Who is also Tom Riddle.
Yeah.
And we know that Tom Riddle has a persuasive way of speaking. Mm-hmm. And whether or not it's pious, whether or not it's Yaxley, spouting these, news articles or these propaganda pieces or whatever have you, let's be real, it's all generally coming from Voldy. Mm-hmm. Everything is spawning from this individual, and they're doing it in a way that's believable. They know if you just blast Harry Potter for any random thing, most people might not believe it. There might be some that still believe it because they probably think that anyway. Mm-hmm. But the majority won't. So now you gotta present it in a believable form. I
mean, just imagine like Bathilda Bagshot. If they wanted to, they could be like, "Oh, Harry Potter visited Godric's Hollow. We found Bathilda's body. Clearly, he murdered her."
They could spin it.
They could. They could do whatever they want with stuff if facts aren't actually provable.
After Rita posts that book, suddenly Harry Potter appears at Godric's Hollow and Bathilda Bagshot's murdered.
Yeah.
They could spin that real easy.
Yeah.
And they can make a very believable case out of that. So even though it's false, they can do it in a way that would make people question, hey, wait a second, there's really good evidence. And it's what Ted Tonks and Dirk Cresswell and the goblins were talking about. It's like, they make a pretty good case against them.
That's why it's so dangerous to have these kind of regimes. Like, you don't necessarily know what's the truth, what's not the truth.
Especially when it's done so smoothly.
Yeah.
Which this takeover seems to have gone so smoothly. Overnight, they're continuing to progress. Yes, it was just the Ministry of Magic. Yes, it was just the Daily Prophet. Now it's all forms of media, whether it's radio or print. And now they've moved on from not just Muggleborns, but now blood traders are also included in their net. So, I mean, they're progressing. They didn't just go all out initially.
I do enjoy the fact that there is this rebel radio station out there, and that the only way to get it is to say the password while you tap it with your wand, which makes me wonder, how did they get the first episode going.
A risk. They probably took a calculated risk.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that's how that happened. But before Hermione gets involved in this whole equation, we are going to take a time out.
Okay.
We'll take a little break. And we will be back with part 2. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy, Cody, John, James, and Deanna, and join them on the Outlap.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Dobby has no master. Dobby is a free elf.
All right, so we are back with part 2 of Chapter 20, Xenophilius, Lovegood. And we're going to get to Xenophilius here, because Hermione chips in with an idea that she has. But I find it interesting that she phrases it with, Harry, we need to talk. Harry, you and I need to have a conversation right now.
While completely ignoring Ron, who was trying really, really, really hard not to annoy her. And the second she got up, he was like, I'm sorry, I'll stop, I swear.
Yeah. Now, I will note, she does say it that way, but she still stays in the tent. She still speaks at a volume that Ron can clearly hear. Mm-hmm. She's not completely isolating him.
No, just making him feel a little uncomfortable, and that's totally fine.
She's sending a message.
Yeah.
She's sending a message. But anyway, her idea is, I want to visit Xenophilius Lovegood. And I want to specifically speak with him about the symbol of Grindelwald.
Because she saw it once again. This time in Rita's book with a letter Dumbledore wrote to Grindelwald.
Yeah, Albus had signed his name with the mark, with the symbol of Grindelwald, instead of his usual A. Mm-hmm. I can't honestly believe they didn't notice that the first time they looked at this letter. I get that the letter was stunning.
I still think it's a little bit like he just put it in the triangle of the A and kind of maybe put a circle around it and put a line down.
Still, it would look kind of odd, tiny. Wouldn't it?
You would think, but maybe it was an extra flourishy kind of signature of Dumbledore's.
Maybe. So Hermione continues on with, hey, I really think this is something. I think this is something we need to check out because it was on that grave in Godric's Hollow, and the dates were way older than what Grindelwald would have been around for. Mm-hmm. And then she thinks about it. She's like, I don't even know if Grindelwald is actually still alive, to be honest with you. And
there's no one else to ask about it.
Harry remains doubtful.
He doesn't want another Godric's Hollow mishap.
Yeah, which is understandable. He's a little, maybe, I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's a little shy on action at this point in time.
It's funny to me since, however many chapters ago, Hermione was the one being like, we gotta be careful, we probably shouldn't go. And he's like, let's go. Now they're switching places.
Yeah, Harry's very doubtful on the plan. Hermione is very adamant on the plan. Ron is very eager to agree with Hermione.
I love the quote where they take the vote and it's Ron and Hermione versus Harry, and Hermione's just kind of like, oh, I hate that you're on my side. And Harry's just like, you only voted because you want her to be happy with you. And he's like, yeah, all's fair in love and war, and this is a bit of both.
Well, he says, Ron does say, his actual point that he throws out there is, hey, look, Xenophilius Lovegood is very pro-Harry. Mm-hmm. The Quibbler produces pro-Potter writings and media and all that kind of stuff frequently, so this should be a relatively safe excursion.
That, and he said, I do think that Dumbledore had a purpose behind all the things he has given us. Harry, I know you've lost faith because of Rita's book, but the Deluminator worked for me in the way that I never could have predicted for myself. Dumbledore knew something about me.
I do really like Hermione giving all of this evidence, and the evidence gets a little bit more strained as she continues. And Harry's even like, okay, you're starting to grasp at straws here.
Yeah.
And then Ron's like, oh yeah, this is perfect. This makes total sense. I really agree with this plan. Let's do it. And Hermione's like, no,
it doesn't.
None of this makes sense. This is a stupid idea, but I think it's our only idea.
Yeah, exactly. What other idea do we possibly have at this point? Like, yes, we've destroyed a Horcrux. Hooray, we have the sword now, but we still have so many left to go. Gotta do something.
Yep. So they head to essentially Ron's hometown. They arrive at Ottery St. Catchpole, and they're in view of the Burrow. And they kind of look at it a little longingly, being like, I can't believe we're so close to everyone we care about, because it's Christmas break still, so everybody's home, and they won't go visit.
And Ron said, like, I miss them so much.
Hermione calls out Ron for being like, why do you want to go back? You just left. And Ron says, no, I was never at the Burrow.
Are you kidding me? They would have skinned me alive.
My brothers, Fred and George and Ginny, do you think they would be cool with me ditching Harry Potter?
Hey guys, I abandoned the chosen one and Ginny, your ex-boyfriend.
The twins and Ginny would put him through so much. It probably would have been untenable, honestly.
I wonder if he ever tells them that he went through this,
Can't.
or if if Harry would just be like, no,
don't.
We're good.
Let that one drop. Let it drop. All of what George has already sacrificed for this.
Yeah.
An ear. He literally gave an ear, and
all the pain Ginny's going through at school.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you were hungry, Ron?
Oh my goodness. I could not imagine what he would catch if he went back to the Burrow and said that.
Yep.
So instead, he says he went to Bill and Fleur's new place, Shell Cottage.
Yeah.
And he did admit, like, hey, Bill's always been nice to me. He's always been really kind. He was not happy with my decision to leave.
I mean, he said he didn't give him a lot of grief, but you could tell he was disappointed. But they didn't push it.
He didn't dwell on it.
Yeah.
So he was clearly not happy with Ron's decision.
Yeah.
And he let him know about it.
Yeah.
He just didn't dwell on it. Because it's happened at this point. What are you going to do, really, I suppose?
And he did express regret, so it's understandable.
Yeah. So instead, they turn away from the Burrow, and they start hunting for the Lovegood's house, which they don't exactly know what it looks like or where it exactly is. They just know it was over the hills somewhere.
I do like Harry's point, though, that... Or was it Harry or was it Ron's? Ron's point of just being like, look, when we see the Lovegood house, we're going to know we're at the Lovegood's house.
It is a fair point. Now, what is the Lovegood's house? The Lovegood's house is a black cylinder, which looks similar to a rook in chess. And it also has an eagle door knocker. So they are flaunting their Ravenclaw backgrounds. At least I'm interpreting it as
I would too, which is interesting because we've seen that from Slytherins, but I feel like other houses we don't really see that flex nearly as much.
I don't know. I don't know that you see it a whole lot from Ravenclaws per se, or Hufflepuffs for that matter. I feel like Gryffindor's boasted quite a bit.
I mean, I know like Sirius
vibe.
had the Gryffindor stuff, and obviously Regulus had the Slytherin stuff. But I would almost think that by the time you're an adult, having your entire household be themed around your schoolhouse seems a little weird, right? Like that'd be like us having our entire living spaces dedicated to our high schools.
Yes, to an extent. I'll counter with 2 points.
Okay.
One, you go to a lot of households and they will rock their favorite sports teams that you grew up with.
Yeah.
So you'll rock, Chicago sports teams. You'll rock some Premier League football teams in England.
But I guess the difference is, like, you're still living in those areas. You're not still attending your high school.
Sure, but they're childhood connections that you've grown up with, and it's like, it's your team. And you can't tell me otherwise. This is what I'm rocking with from earliest on. The other point I'll make is, and this is, I guess, my more accurate or in-depth point, I suppose, But these houses aren't just your school houses. They're innately connected to personality traits about you.
Yeah.
You are quite literally defined by those houses.
What I think about is like, okay, let's say you were to build a house and dedicate it to Ravenclaw. What if you had children who then are not in Ravenclaw? They're going to feel super weird at home.
Well, then you adjust it to them. Like, well, hopefully no one is like the Black family, number one. But number two, I mean, even if you were, you would hopefully allow Sirius to have the offshoot, like, decorations. But look, we've had enough conversations, and I mentioned the house breakdown at the top of the episode. But we've had enough conversations about, honestly, if we're real about it, everyone is a mix of all of the houses.
Yes.
No one is defined specifically as one thing. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very acceptable to have a mix of the houses represented. So I wouldn't be disappointed as a Ravenclaw if my son or daughter happened to be in Gryffindor or Hufflepuff. I might have to be a little... I might have to be a little persuaded on the Slytherin house.
Whatever. Jen's in Slytherin, and she's awesome.
I know. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but the idea that, why do you have, as an adult, your school house as a part of your dwelling? It's because it does define you, and you are defined by it a little bit.
Well, I also enjoy the other things around the house, which is definitely such a Lovegood touch.
So on the front door, by the Eagle Door Knocker, we have the Quibbler, editor, X, Lovegood. Also, pick your own mistletoe, which I feel like is an odd sign to have, but okay. And the third, keep off the dirigible plums.
I looked up dirigible plums a little bit more. Dirigible by itself, like the word means able to be guided. And there were pictures of it on the Wizarding World. They said they're in Hogwarts Legacy, ? But they said they grow upwards on bushes, and they're orange colored. They kind of look like radishes. And the thought was that they will enhance your ability to accept the extraordinary. So it kind of invokes imagery of like Adam and Eve, of like this is a forbidden fruit that is going to open your mind to the wisdom of like a higher power. So the fact that they're like, keep off of them almost gives me the sense of like the Lovegoods want that for themselves.
Well, I think it's like, this is their one get off my lawn moment of like, hey, we're specifically trying to grow these. Can you please...
Don't touch them.
Can you please respect our garden?
Yeah.
Although they don't do that with the mistletoe. They're like, oh, no, take as much mistletoe as you want. So they knock on the door. It is important that Harry has been under the invisibility cloak. Mm-hmm. However, Hermione suggests that he take off the cloak because Lovegood would want to help Harry, not specifically Ron and Hermione. Well, Lovegood opens the door, and he does not look good.
No, they said he seems very unkempt and frazzled. Like his hair is all over the place, and he just looks like thin and just...
dirty. The hair looks dirty. He's wearing a stained top, I think.
Yeah.
Just doesn't look good. Looks disheveled.
He's like, wow, when he was at this wedding, he was like, he cleaned up nicely compared to this.
Yeah. He looked quite dashing, even though he might have looked quite odd. He looked quite dashing. Yeah. So this was quite a sight to see Lovegood in the doorway. Well, Lovegood felt the same way. This was quite a sight to see Harry Potter standing in his doorway.
Yeah. And unfortunately, he does not seem to have the most warm of greetings to one Harry Potter.
No, he's, shocked, and then he kind of stumbles about his words. Before we get all of that, though, I do have to ask you, since, I mentioned the invisibility cloak thing. Mm-hmm. Should Harry have remained under the invisibility cloak and Ron and Hermione try this themselves?
No, I think it was right to take it off. For all we know, Lovegood could have a spell on the house of like, unless you're invited in, then you can't come in. It could be like vampire rules. You have to be invited to come in.
I think they should have at least attempted to get some information out of Xenophilius first. I think the more cautious approach especially with Harry being so worried that this might end up as another Godric's Hollow, I feel like they should have at least attempted, Ron and Hermione first, to talk to Xenophilius. Like, hey, we just want to... What's the harm in just talking to him about the symbol? Like, do you really need Harry Potter there to talk about the symbol?
I mean, I can imagine that he's just like, no, go away, slams the door. I feel like maybe Ron, out of all of them, would have the best luck for talking to him just because they're like, hey, I'm your neighbor. I know I've never come over ever, but
that's a fair point.
You have come to my house before.
Because Hermione is still, I believe, undesirable number 2.
Yeah.
Like, right behind Harry.
Yeah.
So, maybe.
Yeah.
But...
So maybe have both of them underneath the invisibility cloak.
And just have Ron give it a shot?
Maybe.
Possibly. But I think you should.
You got to give him a chance to prove that he's like in it now.
What's the harm in trying to get that information out first, and then if it doesn't work, be like, Harry.
I suppose.
You know. But anyway, yeah. So we get inside the house after some awkward interactions between Harry and Xenophilius of like, you're helping me, right? Right? It won't take very long. And Xenophilius is like, maybe.
I guess come in like quickly, like hurry up. Get in.
I guess I can help you. Sure.
I like the inside of their house though. Harry said it's like perfectly circular, which he did say was a little off-putting because you're not usually in circular rooms. With the furniture all curved to fit the walls, and he said everything is painted in very bright colors of like bugs and birds and flowers, which gave me a lot of vibes of the movie Tangled. I could just imagine Luna sitting around in the house all day just being like, I will paint every surface that can possibly stand still.
I get them as a very artistically open family.
Mm-hmm.
So if Luna is inspired to do something, I could see Xenophilius like, do it, rock with it.
Yeah.
The perfectly circular room and the furniture all specifically designed for that space reminds me of my recent travels. I went to Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and there's a spot in Rotterdam known as the Cube Houses.
Oh, I remember you showing me some of those pictures.
Yeah.
Those are funky.
It's literally like a little column, and on top of the column is a gigantic cube, which is a living space. And all of the furniture has to be specifically designed for this space. And it's some weird, funky spaces. Like, the kitchen is weird. But, that being said, there are some rooms that are surprisingly spacious and very livable. So, it kind of reminds me of that. His description of how the furniture blends in and has to be specially done makes me think of that in Rotterdam. So shout out to anybody listening in Rotterdam.
Yeah, if you're living in one of those cube houses, let us know.
You can do it. They only have 1 or 2 that are set aside for like shops or the one that you can tour, but I believe there are available living spaces there. So anyway, shout out to our friends in Rotterdam. Beautiful city.
Probably easier to arrange the furniture with magic and warp it with magic as opposed to science and math, that kind of architecture.
I would assume there's a lot of magical influence in this house, yes. So, there is a spiral staircase in the center of the building, and they go up the spiral staircase to the next floor. The first floor is a kitchen space. Second floor is more of an office publishing space, as there's a huge...
a printing press.
Press.
He said it's loud, too. This thing's banging.
I was about to say there's a big printing press in the corner. There's no corner because it's a circular building.
Geometry.
But yeah, there's a large, very loud printing press churning out quibblers.
And Lovegood covered it up like immediately.
Yeah,
with the tablecloth.
Xenophilius goes over and he throws like a massive tarp over it just to kind of mute the noises a little bit because this is quite loud in a small space, and obviously they want to talk. However, before they can really get talking, Hermione goes, "Hey, wait a second. Isn't that an Erumpent horn?"
Yeah.
And she cites Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which is a great little shout out,
If you haven't
Easter
seen
egg.
the movie, though, a rumfit is a creature found in Africa. It's very similar to a rhino. The difference being its horn is full of explosive liquid. So Hermione is right. Like this, if you touch it or anything, if anything sets it off, the whole thing could explode at any minute. It's very, very dangerous.
How did they harvest this thing without setting it off?
Well, here's my tinfoil.
He's got a tinfoil hat there. Here we go.
Okay, so Hermione said, like, I can totally tell it's not a crumplehorn snorklax. How do you say it?
Crumple-horned snorkack.
Okay, so not one of those, because that grooved markings are on its base. You can tell. She's like, this is extremely dangerous. Where did you get this? How did you get this? Lovegood said he bought it 2 weeks ago from a wizard. So my theory is the Death Eaters were unhappy with him for everything he's been writing about, like, being Team Harry Potter. So they sent a guy to sell this to him as a plot to get him to die. They hoped it would explode and kill him and thus end the Quibbler.
Yeah, I could buy that. I could totally buy that it's an assassination attempt on Xenophilius' life. My only, I guess, counter to it is, why couldn't they just do it themselves? I would totally buy them just being like, you know what, we want this guy out, and then just do it.
I would say because if the Quibbler stops printing, then people would be suspicious. So we got to make it look more accidental than just murderous.
Maybe that's a.
Can I please have a fun assignment? Because this Quibbler, this Lovegood guy is driving me nuts, and they're like, yeah, have fun.
Okay, I'm gonna be Molly here for a second. Here's what I'm envisioning. Okay. Not comes up. And he's like, hey, Mr. Voldy, sir, I got an idea for you, okay? We got this guy giving us some trouble, okay? He's printing these Quibblers out, and people are actually starting to read these things, okay? So what my idea is, if you give me some leave, if you give me some time off, let me go to Africa really quick. Let me go get this thing. It's called the Rumpenhorn. Have you read Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them? I don't know if you've read that book, but if you have, it's a very dangerous creature. It's a very big creature. I'm going to have to do amazing magic to get this. And then I get this horn. And then I take it. And I offer it to Xenophilius, the editor of the Quibbler, as a gift. And I say, here, mount this on your home. It's one of your crumple-horn snorkack relics. This is how you know they exist. But I'll give it to you at a discounted price. Don't you worry. Not needs a way to get himself on the higher end of this Death Eater hierarchy. He needs to work his way up. So he's got a vision board, possibly a PowerPoint presentation. I'm not sure. He might have coordinated that. The Death Eater Pinterest page must be through the roof. All right?
It is a very dangerous thing. They should not have this in their house.
Yeah. I like the idea of the Death Eaters planting it as a potential accidental assassination attempt. I like the idea of a lower Death Eater pitching the idea and being like, hey, can I take a shot at this? So there's that. Lovegood, Xenophilius still seems cautious about helping Harry. They ask about Luna and where Luna is.
Yeah, because she should be home. This is the holidays.
Correct. Xenophilius says, oh, she's just fishing. Let me go fetch her really quick. And as Xenophilius is gone fetching Luna, Harry notes an interesting bust in the room. The bust is interesting because of what it is wearing. There are 2 gold ear trumpets, a tiny pair of glittering blue wings stuck to a leather strap that ran over the head, while orange radish was stuck to the second strap, which was around the forehead. Weird. Honestly, I read this like 4 times.
Yeah.
And I can't envision it. I really wish... So the illustration at the beginning of the chapter is the Lovegood home, the cylinder tower. I would have loved... Because sometimes they do it. Sometimes they throw in like this illustration that's just bonkers. Mm-hmm. And I would have liked the illustration to be this, because I'm reading it, and I can't envision
So
this.
what I'm envisioning is like a thick strap that goes around the head, almost like how women in the 70s would wear headbands, kind of just across the forehead. And then where the ears are supposed to be, Lovegood said that like the ear trumpet things, he said those are Rexpert siphons to remove sources of distractions. And then the blue wings coming out, I'm imagining in the back, so it almost looks like your head has wings. And he said those are billywig propeller wings to induce an elevated frame of mind. And then the plums, those radish-looking things, the dirigible plums, I'm imagining those just like hanging almost like beads from the strap. And he said those are supposed to enhance the ability to accept the extraordinary.
Well, they can't be hanging from the strap because they're floating. They're dirigible plums.
Well, okay,
So they're hanging,
I'm imagining them
floating.
like hooked.
They're
like
floating,
hooked,
hanging.
Hooked to the headband so that you got almost like a string of them hanging on it like beads, and then the wings in the back to make your head look like it's an insect, and then you got these trumpet things where your ears would be.
What this is, the bust is supposed to be of Rowena Ravenclaw. Mm-hmm. And the intention behind all of this is I don't even know what to call them. The decorations, I suppose. The
art piece. The fashion statement.
It's supposed to be an invention of Xenophilius.
Yeah.
And
it's supposed to be modeled after Ravenclaws.
Yeah, well, yes. So the intent is, I'm assuming, if it's an invention of Xenophilius Lovegood and it's a bust of Rowena Ravenclaw, and he specifically states, wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure, I'd assume it's his attempt at recreating, like...
I mean, some kind of headdress that she would have that would elevate her intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, obviously, Ravenclaw is known for the wisdom and the wit and the intelligence and stuff like that. So, I think this is his attempt at inventing, like, a way to achieve an elevated sense of wisdom and intelligence.
Which is a nice thought. I mean, it's certainly something worth thinking about and pursuing, but clearly he is not necessarily going about it the right way.
I view this as, like, a clearly wrong attempt at an invention of some sort. Mm-hmm. So after they get through the unbelievable absurdity of this bust and the headdress upon said
basically
bust,
this whole house,
they finally get around to asking about the symbol that Xenophilius was wearing at the wedding. And Xenophilius replies, "Oh, the sign of the Deathly Hallows."
Hey, Dan, guess what? We just got the book title.
The book title is officially here in chapter 20. But yes, the Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, dun dun dun.
So, presumably, in the next chapter, we might learn about said Deathly Hallows.
I remember the first time I read this, getting to those last two words, I mean, like, well, shoot, now I gotta read the next chapter. I can't stop now. Gotta keep going.
But we're gonna stop now.
Oh.
Yeah. You'll have to wait till next week to find out our thoughts and opinions on the Deathly Hallows.
Can I give one spoiler that's not even a spoiler, really? The Deathly Hallows is my favorite part of the movies. The animation for it is top-notch. So if you want to prepare for next week, go watch that.
So if you want an excited Elizabeth, return next week. And we will talk some Deathly Hallows. Like I said, thank you all for listening. Please interact with us on social media. Let us know your thoughts on Xenophilius Lovegood and his wonderfully circular home. Mm-hmm. You could find us on all of the socials at Hogwarts a Pod. You can also participate in the polls on our Spotify. You can leave comments on the Spotify if you're listening there. And like I said, we'll be back next week with Chapter 21, The Tale of the Three Brothers.
Yay! Bye, everyone.
So we will see you then. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.